Hi everyone, it's Lisa with Lisa Grace Wigs, and today I just wanted to talk about basically what it's like having two children with type 1 diabetes, also having type 1 diabetes myself, and just kind of the day to day. So we'll start with Riley, my son. He is now almost 20 years old, but he was diagnosed at 12 years old. Basically, with him, I had already, had type 1 for a very, very long time at that point. So he pretty much grew up, seeing the ins and outs and day to day of having type 1, living with type 1. Sorry, my insulin pump is gonna beep. It does that quite often. Anyhow, so we had been going to temple at the time. He was learning Hebrew with a wonderful person, from Israel on the phone each week anyway, for a few years. So all of a sudden I noticed he literally fell asleep in the middle of singing, and I thought to myself, oh no, and my heart just kind of sank. I just kind of knew. And he had never been tested for antibodies up to that point or anything else, but type 1 diabetes does run very predominant in my family. I have several family members with type 1 diabetes. So no type 2 diabetes, just type 1. So anyhow, we went to eat afterwards, and I basically told him, Riley, I need to test your blood sugar. And he didn't feel good at the time. He didn't look like he felt good, which of course, you don't feel good when your blood sugar is way off. Anyhow, he said, can we just do it tomorrow? And I said, no, we really need to check your blood sugar. I won't do it right now, but when we get home, I'm gonna check your blood sugar. So we got home and checked his blood sugar, and the meter just read high, which I knew. That means he's very high. He's over 550. I think that meter was topped out at for a blood sugar. So I had him test his ketones, with a urine test strip, which told me he was passing like low, moderate ketones. So I knew, it's okay. We're not going to panic. We're just going to slowly pack, go ahead and take a shower, and we'll head to the hospital. I knew that he needed to go, but it wasn't like an emergency right that second. So, no nausea, no vomiting, anything like that. He just was, newly type 1 diabetic. So anyhow, we got to the hospital, and by that point, his blood sugar was reading, I think, 650. And of course, they took us right back. Already knew. It was actually kind of funny because the doctor came in and he said, well, maybe it's something else. He said, I don't think so. I have type 1, and kind of explained the familial, how it's carried in my family. So anyway, pretty much, within an hour, they were like, okay, yes, it's obviously type 1. There's nothing else that's causing this. So he stayed in the hospital for, I think, maybe 2 days, because I was type 1 and I had a lot of extra supplies at home. I'm very good at hoarding supplies just in case over the years. It's also allowed me to help out other type 1 diabetics who have been friends of mine over the years who maybe were in a rough patch, and needed some supplies. So anyhow, I did put the Dexcom on him immediately while he was in the hospital, which was amazing because we could just watch his blood sugar. A lot of type 1s go through a honeymoon period where you get them going on insulin, and then you kind of have to watch it. Sometimes you have to back it off, as the pancreas goes, oh, what's going on here? The body can actually start spitting out a little bit of insulin, like those last few beta cells, start working briefly, if that makes sense, until you pretty much burn them out, and then they're gone forever. So he did have a little honeymoon. It wasn't too much. I think I do remember just for a few months, having to watch his insulin, like back it off a little bit, maybe these few days, and then, increase it. So it was kind of up and down, which is very normal. So he pretty much slid right into the day-to-day routine. I think because he had seen me with it his whole life, it made it probably a lot easier, as far as, than some families where all of a sudden, there's no type 1 diabetes in the family and you have a child with type 1. I can't even imagine how to adjust to that, because there's so much learning and education, with having type 1 and treating type 1. And it's just literally minute to minute, day to day for the rest of your life. You do settle into it, where you don't really notice all that extra, time and consideration and everything you have to think about all day. But yeah, at first it's difficult. So that's Riley. Riley has been on an insulin pump, looping with the Dexcom for several years now. I think he went on the pump maybe 6 months or a year after diagnosis, when his honeymoon period was definitely over. Then fast forward 2 years later. So 2 years almost to the date after Riley was diagnosed, Grace, also age 12, they both were homeschooled by me for several years. Grace had come to me and said, I fell asleep putting my makeup on today. And I'm like, what? She wore, I don't know, a little blush, a little lipstick, that type of thing. She was only 12. But again, my heart sank and I just went, you've got to be kidding me. So got the glucometer, tested her blood sugar, and she also was red high, so over 550. Now with her, it was kind of interesting because we already had Cooper. Cooper's our diabetes alert service dog. And when Riley was 13, he started college. Like I said, I homeschooled, so he was able to pass the college testing at 13 years old, and he started classes. At first, he only took, I think, 1 class, and then the next semester it was like 2, and then 4, and then I think his top was 5. So he did have his associates at 17, which is kind of cool. But anyhow, so that's when Cooper came into our life. So Cooper had been in the house for about a year when Grace was diagnosed. So I kept thinking, what about Cooper? Well, Grace had said that more times than she can even count, in about a 2-week period before she was diagnosed, he would come in her room and alert her. He paused, when he alerts. And she would look at him and go, you're insane. I'm not diabetic. Get out of my room. So just being, a typical 12-year-old, leave me alone. Why are you alerting me? So anyhow, the dog knew before anyone. And I really wish I had seen him alert her. But that poor dog must have been going nuts those 2 weeks, because, the high blood sugar sense, the low blood sugar sense, and now there's 3 people in the house. So, and he's really settled into that. He alerts all 3 of us to high and low blood sugar. I mean, he's just amazing. He's now about 8 years old now. So back to Grace. So with her again, tested her ketones. Hers were like mild to maybe barely moderate ketones. So again, I knew we had some time. It's not like, you call 911, run to the hospital. No, it was okay. She wasn't nauseous or vomiting. So, we got ready, showered, packed the hospital bag, and headed out for the second time in 2 years. We got to the hospital with her. They tested her blood sugar, and I want to say she was like 750 or 800. She was high. So again, straight back into the emergency room, and she only stayed in the hospital, I think it was a little over 24 hours. Again, they knew I was a registered nurse. They knew I had type 1 diabetes. They knew Riley had type 1 diabetes. So they really pushed us through as quick as they could to let us go home. We knew it was old hat by that point. So same thing with her. I had the Dexcom on her before she even left the hospital. I also think she adjusted a lot easier, just having seen me with it her whole life. Riley with it for the last 2 years. And, don't get me wrong, there were some frustration here and there, some frustrating days. The high blood sugar out of nowhere. They really had to adjust to that really quickly with their own bodies. And for me, that was awful to see, It's horrible as a parent. Well, okay, first off, it's horrible as a type 1 to know what it's done to my life as far as how I've had to change my life, the things I have to do to manage it, the constant day to day, the frustrations, some days you just don't feel good for no reason. Other times you feel fine and your blood sugar's good. Sometimes your blood sugar's awful for no reason. Hormones affect it, being ill, being tired, pretty much everything affects your blood sugar. So, yeah, that was a difficult adjustment period. But, now we're years later. Grace is turning 18 in a couple weeks. Riley's turning 20. I've had it, let's see, 17 years now I've had type 1 diabetes. So, it's just, we just do it. You just live with it day to day. You do what needs to be done. But, don't get me wrong, some days are still frustrating, but I don't even remember what life was like at this point without it, which is kind of strange. So, yeah. Okay, well, thanks for listening, and I would love for you to tell me your story if you have any, kids with type 1, if you live with type 1, or even if you know someone. Feel free to message me anytime or drop a comment. Thank you.